Thanks for listening to the Drummers Weekly Groovecast. You can contact the show at twitter.com/DW Groovecast and through Facebook at facebook.com/Drummers Weekly Groovecast.
Good evening.
I am warning you right now, if you touch my drums, I will stab you in the neck with a knife.
Ain't it funky? Ain't it funky?
Mom!
Take it easy. Lower it.
I'm not gonna lower it. I have to do this now.
I don't mind you playing it, but lower it.
Everything is straightened out?
No, we had a problem. I mean, we tried to do everything we could.
What do you mean?
Well, you know what I mean.
Little trouble there. You're rushing.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
For our listeners who know who this gentleman is that's sitting across from me right now, I am at his abode, and it's probably not in the place that you think it is. A lot of you folks probably think I'm sitting somewhere in Manhattan right now, but that is not the case.
Oh, man. Yeah, far from it, right?
I'm closer to Manhattan than you are,
Probably.
man, with where I live, that's for sure.
Definitely in surroundings. For sure.
Absolutely. And I'm not going to out you, man. I'm not going to tell these people where you live. We're not going to have people beating your door down, man.
No, man, the police station is like right. It's this cute little A-frame house. It doesn't look like anything, but
that's
like,
the police station?
I could go, hey, help. Right there.
Well,
I think they pick my mulberries in the morning or something.
Hey, man, don't put up with that crap.
Well, we got to stay in good.
There you go. For our listeners, sitting across from me is the drummer from Interpol, Mr. Sam Fogarino.
Howdy.
Man, Sam, it is an absolute pleasure for you to invite me over to your house, and I'm just going to call it rural Georgia.
Rural Georgia. Yep, good old North Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that's how you do down this way, right, man?
It is. That's
hospitality.
Exactly. Well, I'm just going to stay the night, man. I won't be in your hair very long.
There's a bathroom right there.
There is. I just used it.
Yeah. You good? Just knock for coffee.
Hey, man, you don't have to tell me twice. Like I said, I've pounded coffee all the way over here, man, from my house. I appreciate it. But in all seriousness, with where you're at here, you are within what we'll call striking distance of Atlanta. You can get to where you need to go.
Totally. I mean, I know I have a beaten path to the airport.
Oh, I'm sure you do. I am sure you do. I bet you know down to the minute how long it takes you to get from here to there.
And I still don't leave on time.
Well, Sam, our show, we have what I like to call select guests here. We don't interview people every week. And so we do things a little bit differently on this show than a lot of other drumming podcasts. We don't go really deep into like bio and background. However, I do want to get a little bit of bio, a little bit of background just for context.
Sure.
For everybody else that's out there, the rest of our listeners, look, Sam has been interviewed several times in print and on different podcasts. He's talked about his bio and his background in depth in some of those. So if you want to know more, feel free to do a Google search and you'll be able to pick his brain or find some information about him out there. We're going to hit the highlights of it, then we're going to talk about drums, and we're going to talk about touring and life and Interpol and all that good stuff.
Sounds good.
Fogarino. That's a nice, strong Italian name, right?
Yeah.
From Philadelphia.
Yes.
West Philadelphia, I hear.
Indeed.
I've been out that way before a couple times. Just really quickly, I've been to Philadelphia several times. I've played in Philadelphia several times. I stayed in West Philadelphia a couple of times out at the Adams Mark Hotel out on City Line Avenue, I think is what it is.
Yeah.
That's probably not too far from where you grew up.
Oh, it's maybe 2.5 miles.
Yeah.
I mean, that wasn't my immediate neighborhood, but that's where I'm from. That's the part of Philadelphia that I'm from.
Yeah.
Like,
I know that part.
Adams Park, there was, the hospital there is where I was born.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm lying. It's not where I was born. It's where I had childhood pneumonia and was there, hospitalized for 2 weeks. But it was right there, and the ABC affiliate, the news is right there.
Okay.
And then there's it gets kind of suburban. It pushes out the suburbs, but not in that prefab way. It was more of an old school colonial type, federal brick, row homes, and it's just kind of gorgeous out there. And then it goes out into affluent mainline suburban Philly, which is it's like 1%ers live in that
I gotcha.
part. What I mean? It's like DuPont.
Yeah.
DuPont rich. That's what we're talking. It's kind of where I come from, like, Will Smith, the whole TV show, that where he shot. Okay, see, everybody gives me shit about, what, you're from West Philly, born and raised, da da da, and it's just like, yeah. And actually, where they shot the playground scene is Overbrook High, where he went with my older friend. He's about 2 years older than me, and he went to school with this gentleman, Stephen Powers, who has become. Well, he was a graffiti writer at the time, but has become way more of a modern artist. Is Espo, and that tag as outside of the tagging on big walls. He's branded himself in a similar way to Shepard Fairey, not as widespread, but it's interesting. They went to high school together.
I'm going to do a shout out to one of our favorite Philadelphia drummers and Atlanta resident, Lil John Roberts. He's from Philadelphia. He plays with Janet Jackson.
Man, okay.
He's been on our show before.
Hold up. I was just talking about Janet Jackson last night for a separate interview. And we're just raving about a certain period of her music. Which is, and funny enough, a drummer was interviewing me. It wasn't a drum specific. It's actually for the press release of the next Interpol record. But as soon as we were talking about R&B for a second, and he, considering my age, he was like, "What about the '80s?" And I was like, "Not so much, but like, say for like Janet Jackson's Control, rhythmically, Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, what did they eat for breakfast?"
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, this gentleman from Philly plays with Janet Jackson. I imagine, well, first of all, he'd have to have some serious chops to play those grooves with, the intention needed. And then it's got to be fun. Once you're past that, it's got to be fun as all.
Oh, man, let me tell you, we had him on the show. He was, probably in the first 6 months of our existence that we had him on the show. And he and I have got a lot of mutual friends, other people that we've played mutually together with,
right.
And hearing his stories about how he got that gig. He's been on that gig for a little over 20 years, maybe like 22, 23 years.
Wow. Yeah, so he's well steeped.
He's in there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I imagine he's made a lot of that stuff his own as well.
Yeah, he tells this great story, man, about how they rehearse. I know you'll find this fascinating because it's so far removed from anything that I've ever done, and probably yourself also. Because, man, these rehearsals that he has with Janet are these incredibly overblown things to where what they do is simultaneously they'll have the band in one rehearsal studio, so like an SIR type thing, right?
Yep.
And in the other studio, say it's across the hall or down the way a little bit, they'll have a simultaneous kind of a choreography dance rehearsal with an entire troupe. And he tells me that what they do is when they're in these serious rehearsal phases before a tour, they'll start running through these different songs that they've done for 20 years, right?
Yeah.
But what he will do is just occasionally and unknowingly play some kind of a fill. They record it. They send those tracks over for choreography to work on. And what ends up happening, man, is the choreographers will find this really subjective drum fill. Just a drum fill that he just played, just like we all do off the top of our head.
Yeah, of course.
And now that becomes a part of the arrangement, dude.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's pretty intense. So he does make them his own to an extent.
Yeah.
Because also these shows are so highly choreographed that everything is done, of course, with sequences.
Oh, sure. It has to be. Yeah. That's how you do that kind of production.
It's almost to the point. I'm oversimplifying it when I say this, but it's almost to the point where he said that it's kind of like when the show starts, you hit the space bar and then it just goes.
It just goes.
For the rest
of
the time.
Dialed, you're just so guided.
Yeah.
But that's the genre too. There would be something missing. If you didn't have, I mean, like rock music, I think you run the fine line of sounding too much like your record and not enough.
Mm-hmm.
There's that middle ground to people want to feel a live experience, but still they want to know that they're still hearing that same song that they love at home.
Right.
You know? And so with big production like that, you know, you got to keep some of that element. And how are you going to do that? It has to be playback.
Yeah. He talks about it as well, having to cop these feels and these different types of grooves that were, of course, never meant to be played on drums, an acoustic drum set player, right? They were programmed, like you said, by Lewis and Jimmy Jam. And so it's the type thing that he has to be pretty creative at times to be able to make that happen, simply from the standpoint to keep the integrity of the song.
Keep the integrity of the song, yeah. People dancing will know.
Yeah.
You know?
So now we flash back to Philly for a minute. It's my understanding you were there till like your early teens. Is that correct?
Yeah. It was a little segmented from birth to like 15.
Uh-huh.
And then I returned from 18 to like just before 20.
Gotcha. Now, in those early teen years, had you started playing drums at that time?
I always had sticks. And my parents bought me a little drum kit that wasn't exactly a toy drum kit, but it wasn't pro. It was kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And I didn't take to it like to where I knew I was going to be playing this instrument, but they noticed a natural proclivity.
I'll cut that out.
Yeah. I had a natural tendency, you know what I mean? And it wasn't until I was about 12 and a band happened to form in my basement. And I was like, oh, I'll play the drums. You have the basement, Sam. Okay, cool. My mom didn't mind.
Yeah.
And so I learned how to play the drums while learning how to be in a band all at the same time.
Yeah, on the job training,
and everybody
don't get
was
much better than that.
The guitar, two guitar players and the bass player were at just a higher enough level to keep things moving.
Uh-huh.
So they had a little bit more of a melodic or like chordal kind of vocabulary than I did rhythmically, but that was good because then we weren't just, if they couldn't play a chord progression, I wouldn't have nothing to fumble through.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was kind of cool. And then the next thing you know, we wrote 3 songs together, and that's all we ever played.
What, you guys weren't doing any covers?
We started out doing covers.
What kind of covers?
Because
you and I, man, are of the same generation. Because we have similar stories. I can probably tell you about my same stories as well.
Right.
Like
I know this is not a unique scenario at all. So there was some Who. Like the audacity to try my generation.
Yeah.
Right. It sounded like, the young man, like the boy version.
Sure.
How like kids would translate something a little too off the cuff and complex.
Yeah.
Like talk about like a good track based. Those takes were, they're felt in the moment. So fluid.
No sequences there, my friend.
No, man.
Yeah.
No. So, that kind of thing, some Stones, Sympathy for the Devil, and maybe a Kink song here and there. So there's a little bit of repertoire, and then nobody was interested. It was kind of fun, but then immediately boring.
Yeah.
And we just started writing these, rudimentary kind of somewhere in between, like, that kind of rootsy rock and roll and punk rock.
Yeah.
It was kind of in that middle vein, power pop, if you will.
Okay.
More leaning towards like wanting to be Cheap Trick.
Uh-huh.
But still there's a lot of that punk. I mean, punk rockers love Cheap Trick. Steve Albini loves Cheap Trick, which is, it's kind of funny when you think about the man who hates melody the most out of any producer, recording engineer, loves one of the most melodic rock bands that ever existed. Like melodic and harmonious
at the same time. Who would have thought?
These guys, Steve, they can sing.
Yeah.
Wow. You like them and they can sing.
Now, I'm going to ask you the $1 million question. This, I know for a fact, this had to be happening in the early and mid 80s. Okay. How in the world did you escape the hard rock hair metal phase, or did you?
I escaped it.
Uh-huh.
I did, but like, okay, is it less embarrassing to look like a member of Duran Duran?
Good point.
I mean, so
Good
it was a
point.
different. We as young men, we went to different women's stores to shop.
Mm-hmm.
It's really, and it's always at that, it's that age where there's rivalry for no reason, and then what would happen with me is that because I still liked some hair metal, I didn't care for, the fashion statement, but I still liked some songs. It's rock. It's just rock music, right? With a different approach, and so I'd get along with these guys.
Well,
I had a rapport, and they, I was the kid they weren't supposed to like, and I was supposed to hate them. And then when you realize what you're talking about is the same fucking thing.
Well, I'll tell you this also. Another thing I think that gets glossed over all the time, man, when you start talking about the hard rock and the metal type stuff from the 80s, a lot of those cats could play. They could flat out play.
They were really good.
Yeah.
I had okay, I would call it the privilege to, and this is Philadelphia pure hair metal like history here.
Can I guess who it is? Is it Cinderella?
You said it, my friend.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
Yeah.
Jeff LeBar, who was definitely an incredible guitar player, played, I don't know if he was just doing it to play, but he found these kids in my neighborhood that were the best musicians of that time. This is like the very early 80s. And Cinderella was about to happen. Like they were going to get signed. He knew that he'd be touring the world, still wanted to rock out with these kids. And he was about 5 years older than they were. And they would just play like not just covers, but deep like Rush off of like flip side of that's the B side of Permanent Waves, Natural Science. And just, the longest, most obscure Zeppelin song. They'd really roll deep into this. And, it's like, what is he, he's going to be a rock star. And then sure enough, Cinderella was like the pretty much biggest thing for a minute.
They were huge.
In pop music. And another funny thing is my cousin went to high school with him. Yeah, and said he was cool. She said he was a cool dude all 4 years. She wasn't tight with him, but like just good guy in high school. Like everybody liked him. He was kind of unassuming.
They're still somewhat active. It's my understanding, they still play a little bit, but of course, again, it's sort of like they're victim of their own time.
Man, yeah,
of course. Now, Sam, also, while we're still in Philadelphia and you were learning your craft, learning how to play, did you ever take any type of lessons from anybody?
Well, no, not formally. There was a drummer by the name of David Romani who was about my age, and I met him when I was about 11, and I went to his house, met him through a friend who took me over there, and this 11-year-old kid was playing Good Times, Bad Times with one foot. Mm-hmm. He was copying the whole thing, and he's 11 years old. And all at once, I was like, I don't want to drum anymore because there's no way. And he's like my age, was crushing. But then it was like, he's a nice guy. I'm just going to hang around him and maybe it'll rub off or something. And he was really patient with me. And I would sit there and watch him practice, and he'd take a break and say, go ahead and sit behind the kit. Just go nuts. And then he'd come down and he goes, this is what you're doing wrong. You're so tense, my friend. And he would say, if you want to play like me, first thing is just loosen up and breathe. And we kind of, when I formed my little band around that time, I kind of lost contact with the kid. I kind of got my own world and, it was doing my own thing. But I never forgot, like, first of all, like, it's amazing. The cruelty of existence is technically this guy, I mean, I don't know if he had Neil Peart's creativity, but he was playing really complicated music before he was 12.
Even a teenager.
While he was a preteen. If that's some kind of talent. Maybe he didn't have a creative side, but like put a chart in front of him and he nails it. Like precision. So maybe at the time he could have became, I don't know whatever happened to this gentleman. He could have became a really creatively incredible drummer.
Uh-huh.
But even before that, like his ability to emulate was almost like autistic. It was so precise.
Well,
and he was like my first real inspiration.
Well, regardless of like, any type of autism, one of the most important things he related to you was hey, if you're going to play this and do this right, you've got to relax.
Relax.
Yeah. That's huge, man.
It was very insightful, and he was a big boy.
Yeah.
He was an overweight kid.
Uh-huh.
And beyond that drum kit, like he had the power of his weight, but then he had the finesse of a feather.
Right.
And it was really I could see him was close proximity. And it was just like having one of those heavyweights in front of you.
It's funny, isn't it? Sometimes that when someone is that important to you, so to speak, and they probably don't realize it.
Right.
Isn't that amazing?
No, and it was, kids, you don't really know how to articulate what you're feeling.
Uh-huh.
You don't really understand it. You gravitate to this. And you know the obvious, it's his ability. But just him letting me hang out and letting me sit behind his kit and kind of suck the vibe in.
Yeah.
Have him rub, what's that called? Osmosis.
Yeah.
And, it was just the most important thing. Like you said, never mind, learning any kind of rudiments or whatever. It's like, relax. I think I was trying to play a car song.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, Don't You Stop,
mm-hmm.
and that middle section, or towards the outro, I was just, I was just like, and he's like, no, stop, dude, come on, this is like, don't let it play you. And he's a big dude. It's like, ugh.
So, after that, okay, you continue on in your band.
Yeah.
Was there ever a time that you thought to yourself, if I'm going to keep doing this, I've kind of got a couple of different roads that I can go. And, the obvious ones are, hey, I've got to get out there and start beating the streets and start making a band happen. Right? And the other one is, well, maybe I should go into some sort of formal study, some sort of higher learning. Did you ever have that kind of crisis to where you sat there and you thought, man, I've got to figure out what I'm going to do?
Well, I had just the ignorance of like blind ambition.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how. I know that, you can go take music business classes.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that was not going to guarantee any kind of success as a musician or even as a, in the business of music. But I was like, well, I want to play music, and I don't care what I have to do as long as I can keep playing it. And the thing I insisted on was always playing with people who wanted to write their own music. At that point, after that first band in Philadelphia, I had no interest in playing any covers. And so it was just that kind of, well, none of these bands played covers, and if they did, it was for fun. Or it was just like a cover in a set, just like a lot of bands do.
Sure.
It wasn't, they just wanted to do their own thing. It's just like, and my point would be like, Devo did not start as a cover band. And what they were doing was really like, man, they were asking for a lot from people.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were definitively angular for what was happening, And so it was that kind of thing that kind of gave me the kind of, ignorance to just keep trying. Because you just don't know. There's no map to follow.
Now, when you decided that this was going to be what you were going to do, okay. Now, somewhere along the way, you had to get some serious practice in. There had to be something that you did, whether it's playing the records, grabbing some sort of methods that you knew, like, hey, I hear that stick control is the thing to work on or something like that. What did you practice then?
Well, I was always playing with people.
Uh-huh.
And I think that's ultimately what led me to where I'm at. And, if there's something unique about me that somebody likes, it comes from that. It comes from learning how to be a drummer in a band.
Yeah.
So what came first was kind of in reverse. Like, I started getting into more technical aspects of drumming, like, well into my professional career. Like, I'd learned things by default.
Yeah.
Things just kind of happen because you are referencing. I mean, drumming, it's different to listen to something for inspiration, because I always liken a beat to a guitar chord.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, 90% of rock music written has an E chord in it, you can't avoid the E chord, or it doesn't belong to anybody.
Yeah.
So there's certain modes of playing, and, what you do, or what you try to stay away from, is copying someone's feel or aping it.
Right.
It's one or the other. Like, it'd be too much if I did this, which would be overtly like a Neil Peart thing, but I could allude to that, and, the people who care will get the nod. You know what I mean?
Sure. That's kind of interesting, the way that you did it, that it's kind of like, I'm going to be in these different groups, and I'm going to, of course, you get the old on-the-job training, but
Right.
I'm sure there were times that you were going through that it's kind of like, hey, this is something that I need to actively play, so I've got to teach myself how to do this.
Plus, there was no matter who I was playing with as a teenager, fully knowing this is not going to be the end point, I had to find, outside of this vocabulary that I was building within the music that I was writing with these kids, I still had to find out who I was.
Uh-huh.
So that's still, like, you can't be boxed in. It was good, like, that on-the-job training was awesome, but I still needed to figure out what else I liked about drumming.
Yeah.
Outside of the context of a band. So I would play the records, or I would just sit there and, mentally isolate the drum track. And I think it got really fun around U2's Unforgettable Fire with Larry Mullen. And that was like, you're doing something weird, my friend.
Yeah.
You're doing what's up with the floor tom on your left side, and you're playing it like a kick drum. You're accenting like it's a kick drum note, and this is badass.
Yeah.
And kind of copying these things and never wanting to emulate them, but like, how can I put this onto the palette? It was that process that when I was isolating the drums, for inspiration or just trying to better myself as a drummer, it would always, the information would be lifted from not words, but music, from the drum track.
Sam, I want to stand up on my soapbox for one moment, and I want to encourage everybody. If you didn't hear exactly what Sam said for the last 2 minutes, go back right now, because what he just talked about for the past 2 minutes is one of the things that you've heard me harp on over and over again, is that I feel like today, I do a lot of teaching, Sam.
Oh, cool.
I feel like today there is a significant lack of curiosity by a lot of students.
Oh, people. I agree.
Yeah. And one of the things that I think, again, here I'm going on the old man soapbox, that I think breeds that lack of curiosity is too many things are kind of presented and handed to you immediately. Because here's the thing. Mm-hmm. You mentioned, the Larry Mullen stuff with the floor tom over by the hat, right? Which is, man, that was some heady stuff for 1984, right?
And you know what? Can I sidebar?
Yeah.
He feels bad about it because he couldn't play the whole pattern with his foot.
Oh, that is kind of interesting.
And I said, he said that, I met him and he said that to me, and I was like, you're lamenting to me, and I was the one moving my floor tom over to figure out what the fuck you were doing, Larry. And he's like, "Oh, I did because I couldn't do da-doom." And I was like, "Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
You did da-doom." And it's something else still.
Right.
That kind of accent. It's that kind of like using the different drums for a voice that you may not be intended for.
Well,
that floor tom is the resolve of a drum fill or a big accent.
Yeah.
But to it's like kind of tonal kick drum performance.
It's the old necessity's the mother of invention.
Totally.
Right?
Yes.
And so to kind of finish up on what I'm saying is that
course.
Sam was basically saying that he had to figure out on his own. He had to take these recordings and figure out what the heck was going on with this thing. In other words, you really had to put your ear super close to this recording.
Indeed.
And you had to figure it out. And then there's a ton of trial and error that goes with that because, you can't just, in 1984, you can't just dial up YouTube and look at, this guy playing this pattern. You had to try to figure some stuff out when you did that. And I do feel like that is sorely missing today. I really do. There's a lot of times, man, that kids just don't have that they don't have that spirit of investigation.
Yeah.
They don't have that curiosity.
Yep.
To really sit down for days, if not weeks or not even months.
It becomes part of your
to
life.
Figure that out.
It's kind of ongoing for a spell.
It's time well spent.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important. That's the base, that's foundation.
Yeah.
I agree with you. There's everything's handed to you don't think of a drum part as like having many components to make it what it is. You think of, we'll put a loop there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, well, the loop you're borrowing, like, did you think of how it was made? If it was being sampled from the 60s or something, like, wouldn't you want to just play that? Like, I get the technology, how it feeds a certain branch of creativity. Cool. I'm not opposed to machines. I have those two cardboard boxes are filled with modular synth modules.
Okay.
So I love the computer too, my man.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I want to be able to play everything I program. Or I want that almost that contrast to go into what I'm programming. Like one hand watches the other. You know what I mean? And the combination of emulating, a machine and what you end up with, or having the machine emulate a person, it's like you get the in-between. You get these things that, it's like you get Peter Gabriel in 1980. Like, what's going on there, that ultimate mix of acoustic and drum loops, and that Neil Peart said around that time, it was a question, this is, I guess, would be moving pictures era. It was Peter Gabriel was like, what's that? His face is melting. Half his face. It has like Shock the Monkey on it, and I don't remember. Oh, it's Face Fat. No, that's Phil Collins. That's the other one.
Yeah.
But it was as opposed to Neil Peart, like, who's your favorite drummer right now? And he's like, whoever is programming Peter Gabriel's drum machines.
Interesting, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, now we've gotten into Philadelphia, and you had a time in Florida as well, right?
Yeah, that's actually where I kind of stepped it up. That's when I started playing out, like in rock, kind of semi-pro.
Professional gigs.
Just gigs making money, not much, but original music, playing the scene, in Miami.
Sure. And then from there, you went back to Philadelphia.
Went back to Philadelphia for a minute. My sister got married, and then my mom and I left again and went back to Florida.
Okay.
And then
what part of Florida, Sam?
Miami.
Okay.
Miami, Fort Lauderdale. It was always back and forth.
Gotcha.
And that's where I ended up joining a band in 1990 called the Holy Terrors. And that was definitely my first real band. These guys were 5 years older than me, and it blew open a whole other door. They were coming from Sonic Youth, Pixies, Firehose, Husker Du, Killing Joke, just a whole other branch of guitar rock that I had a clue, I knew who the Pixies were. I had already loved the Clash. Mm-hmm. There were certain bands. I was aware of the Pogues and didn't know. I knew about Sonic Youth. I knew about Husker Du, but I only touched the surface, and I was diving into that pool.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so beautifully wide, and it seemed like endless to go from Bad Brains to Fugazi to Sonic Youth to My Bloody Valentine. It was just all this guitar stuff. Whether it sounded like some other kind of soundscape or outright heavy metal, the scene that I got dumped into like blurred some lines. So it was cool.
Well, it certainly set you up for where you are right now.
Oh yeah, it was that. This definitely was like, in terms of like the indie rock, part of Interpol's trajectory was sorely informed by the 90s for me.
Yeah. Now, somewhere along the way, you had to get yourself from, you went South Florida, Philly, back to South Florida.
And then
I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here from looking at some of the interviews and things that you had online.
Yeah.
You basically said, I'm just going to go to New York.
Yeah.
And I mean, you really didn't necessarily have a plan at that time, did you?
Oh, yeah, no, it was, I look back and I was
heady,
like, man, I could have been ugly.
Yeah.
It could have been like so soul crushing.
Yeah.
And demoralizing. It's just like, it's one or the other happens. Like, you do well or you leave.
Yeah.
It's just, and I just had an acquaintance that said, do you want to come up? It was just the wrong question at the right time, because the answer was, I'm leaving now. I had $50.
Yeah. Well, it's the proverbial thing of if you have a friend up there, you've got a couch to crash on, so to speak, and that's probably what it was, right?
It was. I crashed in the back of a clothing store, vintage clothing store.
And then you started. Did you work at that store?
I did work. It's called Beacon's Closet. It's pretty much an institution now. It's big. Big warehouse type places in Manhattan and in Brooklyn. And but that is the place where everything happened out of there for me. This my social life, and then connecting with Daniel Kessler from Interpol, all happened because of this place.
Where
was I getting at? Beacon's Closet clothing store. I lived. So when I first got there, hanging out with this friend, this acquaintance fell through, and I remembered that there was even, like, to a lesser degree, another acquaintance. That, this girl who dated a friend years before, maybe she'll remember me, and maybe she won't mind if I come and crash on her floor for a night while I figure out a plan. Well, the next thing you know, I'm running her store. It was just like, I'll paint for beer.
Sure.
And then I started selling music, like records, off the counter, and then the next thing you know, there's like this little record enclave, know. And so that kind of really led me to Daniel and, meeting a lot of people, or meeting the people at Matador. And not that had any relation to what happened with the band, but like, it set me up to be in a good position for the awful word networking.
Right. This late 90s?
That's what they used to say in the late 90s.
Yeah.
Networking. Yeah, I landed there in 97
and
joined Interpol in 2000.
Right.
So it was that period, I germinated.
Just out of curiosity, was the Kessler meeting, was it something where he was coming in to shop for clothes?
No, not
okay,
quite.
Because I was going to say, talk about happenstance.
It would be funny. It would be funny.
Would be crazy,
right.
Wouldn't it?
No, we had an acquaintance that I worked with for a brief time, and I wanted to go see the band Firewater, members of ex-Cop Shoot Cop Todd Ashley, and they were on the label that Daniel was working at the time called Jet Set. It was this Manhattan label, and I called this friend of ours. I said, "Hey, he worked in distribution. Can you get me on the guest list to this Firewater show?" And he's like, "Firewater? Oh yeah, Jet Set Records. That's Daniel. Oh, you should meet Daniel." And so I went to the show, and I don't know how. Maybe Dennis, our mutual friend, gave Daniel a very good description. But Daniel walked. He's like, "Are you Sam?" And I was like, "Is it that obvious?" Meaning, like, do I? Because I am alone. I mean, I just arrived. I was in New York for like less than a year, like a few months, and Daniel just kept. He sold me on what he was doing. Like, he was working for this label Jet Set, and Mogwai was happening. And he was starting Interpol. He hadn't started. I think Interpol was just starting, and so at first Daniel was soliciting me to come and see them play, not to join them.
Right.
And I did. I went down the street to. I'm sure some of your listeners will remember the Charleston on Bedford Avenue in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg.
Mm-hmm.
That was like, where unsigned punk bands, would kind of blow through town, or a new local band that needed a first gig or a second gig. That's what you did. It was a pizza joint. You played in the back.
Right.
And I went to see Interpol there and could only stay for like 4 songs because it was really awful.
Really?
And I felt really bad because I was like, man, I like Daniel. It's going to be, I don't want to, he doesn't ask me what I thought because I don't want to be a dick. But it wasn't good.
Was it but was it any of the songs that ended up on like Turn on the Bright Lights?
I think the only song that maybe they were playing that people would know would be PDA.
Okay. And that was
I don't know if I heard that day, but that is from the original batch.
Yeah. Was Paul singing at that time?
Oh yeah,
also?
it was everybody was in place except for me. It was a guy named Greg Drudy, who I'd never met before, but he was the drummer for the first 2 years of Interpol.
Yeah.
And it was really a train wreck.
Well, now here's a completely subjective question for you about this, okay?
Yeah.
Do you feel like that when you heard them and it was not good, do you just think that it was a case of here's a group of guys that have gotten together that have not found their potential yet? They haven't found their songwriting voice.
Yep.
That's what it was.
They didn't know who each other were. That's what it looked like. A few dudes who got together at NYU by virtue of being musicians and thinking each other were kind of cool. They were just really just in their own world.
All 3 of those guys, or 4 at that time.
At that time, yeah,
were NYU students.
Yep. They're all NYU students, and it seemed like they were playing 4 different versions of the same song. It just was not cohesive to the point where I could. It was too soon. My biggest critique would have been, you should wait 2 more months and play those songs to death.
Yeah.
Then I heard shortly after that, maybe a year later, 6 months later, I heard their first demo because it was recorded at a studio that I was recording at myself with a different band a week later. And Interpol didn't like their original drummer, and at that time, I didn't like the band I was in. And this engineer, Doug Henderson, who used to be a partner with Dave Sardi, we should all know who Dave Sardi is, at a studio they co-owned together called Moose, which is no longer, the building's even gone. Incredible. I mean, it was co-owned by Dave Sardi, so you can imagine it sounded like Dave's. Just everything had a growl. It was this rich analog done right. Cool little studio. Really, really awesome. And Doug pulled me aside, and he's like, well, I see why you hate the band you're in. They suck. And I'll tell you what, Daniel Kessler? And I was like, yeah. He's like, you need to be in his band. They need you, you need them. And I was like, he's too young. Like, they're too young, and it sounds too... Man, they'd kill me. It sounds too retro for me.
Yeah.
Sounds too 80s for me. And he's like, you should just give it a chance, whatever. And another year went by. I was not interested. And I remember starting to write music on guitar with a friend of mine, which never really went anywhere. And I played him the Interpol demo tape cassette. And he's like, oh, man, this is awesome. I was like, you really like it? He's like, yeah. If we get a set together, can we play with them? And I was like, I'm sure. I know Daniel. Like, yeah, that would be fun. And that was the end. That was the last I would think of it for a while. And this project, whatever I was doing with this friend of mine, it lasted a minute. It never left my apartment, And then I think Daniel called me. And he was like, hey, what are you up to? I was like, nothing really, musically. And he's like, we should really meet up. So I said, okay. And so we finally did meet up. And they had recorded yet another demo. And this time, they nailed it.
Okay.
It was much more realized Interpol. And I went home and put that demo on and panicked. Because I was like, I need to be in this band now. Like, it was like this.
You knew it. It was an intuitive thing.
It was like, no, this is what I gravitate to this.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, and it was at the time, there wasn't much atmosphere happening in rock music, especially locally in New York. It felt like every other musician wanted to be Johnny Thunders. And it was just this ode to really simple rock and roll. And I didn't want to do that. I was like, no, I didn't want to do that. And I think maybe the last real rock band I liked was Jawbox.
Mm-hmm.
So it has nothing to do with drug abandon, And aside from that kind of more angular approach, I always had a thing for just big atmosphere. I was like, that's not happening? Where is the atmosphere when you strike a chord? Where is these 4AD bands? Where have they gone? Why have kids unplugged their delay pedals? And the next thing you know, I'm hearing Daniel and Paul play guitar. And I'm like, what? Whoa, wait a minute. And the cool thing was I played it for some friends, and they were like, is that a guitar or synth? I was like, well, it's guitar. You ask? No, wait a minute. He's right.
Right.
It has more of a pad-like quality to it, not so percussive with the guitar. It's just, and I just realized it was not only their use of delay and reverbs, but how Daniel and Paul played together, creating chords with single notes, creating these complex little, and that triggered that's why I like Sonic. Lee Ronaldo and Thurston Moore create one pattern, one mode together because they're so polar opposite.
Yeah.
So it was very guitar centric and not stopping at the distortion and four chords. Still having that spirit. It still was when it's going to be up, it's going to be up, and when it's not, it's going to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
It's going to go down avenues that and funny enough, that at times, maybe to their dismay at this point, this is 2000, almost sounding proggy. It's I
understand that.
Almost okay,
I understand
the new,
that.
And there is a song that we used to call Cubed that might have been falsely titled Mascara, and it only exists in a really awful form. No. I think we finally did record it. I don't know if it's ever been released. There was a really bad acoustic version pre-signing to Matador. But that was definitely, I was like, oh my God, this is if the Chameleons were doing a Yes cover.
Yeah. Well, one thing I think that's kind of interesting is that, and you even mentioned something about this, is that prior to the turn of the millennium in New York in so many ways was almost a little bit of a forgotten entity when it came to rock bands.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, around that turn, you had some different bands that came together like the Strokes, Yeah, Yeahs.
Yep.
And then Interpol. Right. Now, here's the interesting part to me. A lot of times you guys get lumped in with it, and you couldn't be more different, in my opinion.
No, I mean,
than those groups.
Yeah.
So I think that in some ways that you guys, and you're not victims, but I was going to say you kind of get lumped into you guys are part of the New York resurgence of rock and roll,
Totally.
from back in that early millennium time.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's crazy how that, to a lot of people at this point, has the same allure that it did when you think of the Velvet Underground or the Ramones or Blondie or Talking Heads, like late 60s or that mid 70s period. And it was weird because you're in the eye of the storm.
Mm-hmm.
When all that stuff was happening, you're still like jealous of the Strokes, but you like them, so you wish them well, but there's an envy that they're the biggest thing at the moment. And you see, Nick Zinner in passing as he, is going, you're going to the airport, he's leaving it, and all your friends, guys on TV, on the radio, we would come across these guys. They would be working at the coffee shop that we all went to. They would have a rehearsal space with some other people. There's some other crossover bands, side projects. So those guys were always around. The Battles guys were around. And then the next thing you know, we're all gone, and we're running into each other in Tokyo. And, and people think that we're all hanging out together at some bar like it was in the 70s. It's like, no, we're all working. Yeah. When I go back to New York, everybody's gone. And you're asking me about like some kind of scene. It's like, well, no, what happened was they realized there was a scene. Now they all have record deals and they're all touring the world at different times. And you know what? I haven't really seen anybody regularly since that period. All those people you used to see on the street all the time, or you see them, at the coffee shop or going to their rehearsal, and you're wishing them well, and you knowing that a lot of people are going to their shows these days, and then bang, Interscope Records, for both TV on the radio and yeahs. And
those bands are, you guys are, for lack of a better term, victims of success.
Yeah. That's what, and it's like, well, this is kind of how it looks. Wow, everybody thinks we're all hanging out.
Yeah.
Drinking all night, and no,
you're working.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I want to step back just a second about when you were first joining Interpol, okay? Because I've said on this show before, for our long-term listeners, they will know that I picked Obstacle 1 as one of my great drum tracks.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. And we're going to actually, Sam agreed to do something kind of special that we've never done on this show before. We're going to do it in a few minutes, but I want to lead into it by asking you, when you finally got a chance to play with Kessler and Banks, and Carlos, I guess, at that time, right?
Especially that. Yeah, that's when we were on fire together.
Did you know from the jump when you joined that band? Did you I've caught lightning in a bottle?
Man, okay, yeah. So getting back, I heard that demo.
Yeah.
Which is now referred to as the Gray EP and goes for like $500 on eBay. If you find a copy, it's like, now it's legend.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, yeah, this is going to happen. So when I went to rehearse with them, they were really like, just mind the arrangements, but play, we want to see what you would do.
Yeah.
And then they said, how about if we start with something brand new that we haven't played with a drummer? And I was like, cool. And Daniel later told me that the way I entered the song was what he always imagined, and that he looked at everybody and was like, mm-hmm. And it was just that simple, of it was making such a simple choice.
Yeah.
Play such a rudimentary beat that was like the fact that I was riding on the floor tom for this once. I just heard that he was like, and to him, who he will confess to you like this very moment, he doesn't have a good vocabulary when it comes to expressing rhythm, and so he felt frustrated. He would feel even before he would attempt to try to suggest what I would do, he was already like, he's doing it. I don't have to try to say, dude, hit that drum there with that drum,
Right.
And they were all kind of blown away. And it was just kind of that, it was instant.
You guys pulled the proverbial lottery ticket there, because that just doesn't happen.
No,
man.
it doesn't. It's really, and I, even admiring the music and the sense of atmosphere that they already constructed, where I could literally step in. I didn't know if it was going to work because I didn't like them.
Yeah.
They were hard. Like Daniel, I liked a lot. By
and we're
virtue
talking
of,
about personally here.
Personally, yeah, Daniel was easy because I had a pre-existing rapport with him. But Carlos and Paul were hard pills to swallow. They were just different.
You the new guy?
I'm the new guy, and Carlos was just an asshole. He was really in love with himself, and Paul was just complicated.
Yeah.
He's like double BA in literature at 21. So, fair enough. But, it was like he was 10 years younger than me.
There's something to that, too.
Yeah, and I was like, I want to be in a band with somebody 10 years older than me. Yeah. I don't want to be the old one. I don't like myself that much, And I was like, oh. And then I had a friend of mine who lives on the West Coast, and he's like, man, you got it wrong, dude. You're a rock drummer. You need to be playing with some guys younger than you. You're done. Like, you're retired already, man. These kids know what's up now. And he's like, what's wrong with you? Join the band. And I was like, you're right. Just let me get my head out of my ass. Stop being uptight about age and just give it a chance. Well, shortly, where I just let it go, I realized how fucking smart Paul was.
Yeah.
And I didn't care about his lack of street smarts. He had a different sort of street smart. He'd been around the world. He comes from privilege. But man, his imagination was insane. And he was very, he's so British in the way he articulated. He's the thing I loved about him the most was he's always calm.
Yeah.
Even when he got quote unquote angry, it's hard to tell. And so I appreciated that. Although he could be a total snot and have the singer's disease and want all the attention and not, let where the after party is on purpose. Right. Because he doesn't want the other good looking guy around.
Does Paul write all the lyrics?
Absolutely.
Kessler writes the music, most of the music, right?
Pretty much. Kessler, to be fair to all the work that Paul does, Kessler comes in with the meat and potatoes. Like, Kessler comes in with parts that could exist as like, if he'll have two parts, and it could be a simple piece. It could already exist. You could play it on acoustic guitar or a piano, better yet, and it would survive as some kind of compositional piece of music. And then what happens thereafter is it's all the transitional bits and all the counter stuff that Paul writes that makes it an Interpol track.
And what you do.
Absolutely. And that's why, even when I don't want to be there playing that song for the 25th time. No, wait. Playing the verse to that song for the 25th time in a row. Even when I say, God, I need that, they're like, no. You might trigger something. It's like Paul is like, there's definitely, we're attached. Or like we commonly view the drums in Interpol as his punctuation, his melodic punctuation. And so, yeah, I mean, I can't get out of writing sessions even if I wanted to. They won't let me. Well,
You should be there because one of the things that I highlighted when I was talking about Obstacle 1, and we're about to get there, is I feel like when I listen to Interpol, there are three things that make Interpol. And I mean, if I hear one of these three things, I know who it is. One, it's composition. It's the chord progression. It's the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Banks's voice, instantly, right? And your drum parts, man.
Cool. Appreciate that.
Those three things, to me, that if one of those went away, you've lost that band.
And that's, with all due respect to, Carlos, who made his own decision to walk away from music, period. As much as like it was obvious that something was going to change because he's not there, and he had a big, almost too big of an impact on the textural aspect of the band, like all the keyboard stuff. It became way too important to him. He took it out of context. And that's when he decided to leave. It was kind of at this time where he's getting into acting and film score, and he essentially just wanted to write score over Interpol chord progressions. And it created such a conflict between Paul and him, because Paul would say, "You're writing the vocal. I can't sing here. Do you understand that?" And Carlos, who was the king at arbitration, would go, "Well, why can't you? You theoretically explain to me," and it would be like, "Theoretically explain to you? Fuck off, man. We're a rock band." And just wielding that kind of intellect for the sake of getting your way is crazy. So he was very imbalanced, and it was detrimental to the band. And so at that point, I know that trumps talent right there. When you're destructive to something that people love and live, breathe, and eat, you are no longer credible. Mm-hmm. So get the fuck out of the room, and we'll take it from here. And the first thing I said to everybody when there was a little bit of panic, losing a cult of personality in your band, is we got this. I hate that phrase too, but that's the only thing you could say. It's like, no, if you don't depend on us, I do. And I am a fraction of the musician that Carlos was on a theoretical level, but I know this band, and it can be done. And sure enough, that's when Paul picks up a bass. So it is more than you say. I agree with you without seeming, too proud of my contribution. It's the three of us.
I completely agree.
It's like the burning elements.
Mm-hmm.
And like I say, not to repeat myself, that's why Paul will say, "No, you have to be here."
Yeah. It's the signature element. Those three things to me are the signature elements of the group.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, without any further ado, we're going to do something on the show that we've never done before. And Sam has agreed so graciously to listen to a track that he played on, and he's probably played 5,000 times, and he wants to hear it again. But what we're going to do is we're going to take the aforementioned obstacle 1. And Sam, look, here's what I kind of envision that we'll do on this. And man, feel completely and totally free to just go at times, "I don't even have a good answer for this. Let's just go on," right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the track. And I've got written down a few places that I'm going to stop the track, and I'm going to ask you, how in the hell did you come up with this?
Cool.
Right? Or who started this? And better yet, are there some places where the band went, "What are you doing back there?"
Yeah.
Okay. So,
okay, cool. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's go ahead, and I'm just going to start this track right from the get-go. So this is obstacle 1. Here we go. Okay, so we stopped this at about 35 seconds.
Right.
Do you know why I stopped it right there?
Is it the drum pattern?
It's the kick pattern.
The kick pattern.
Now, that's got some Bonham influence in it right there.
Oh, God bless his soul.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, it follows the bass line also.
He follows the drum pattern.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so you came up with that right there.
Yeah. And that is a very I wanted to darn it. I wanted to make that bounce more. So it's like the intro is playing along in unison with that, but that can't go on forever.
Right.
Let's just add, without cluttering it up too. That's why it's kind of intermittent. It's like fitting the notes into this part of the phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And then leave the room.
Right.
Do that. Bap. And that's I find that to be like a whole Bonham movement.
Yeah.
And he would kind of hold back on that last note to kind of drag it out a little bit for a little bit of drama, just a little bit of
yeah.
What you doing? Pap,
right.
kind of.
that
attitude, not drama, attitude.
Right. The bounce of that kick drum and bass line, what you're talking about, it's a really nice counterpoint to what was just a straight
kind
rock
of straight
groove,
thing.
man,
Yeah, straight rock
before
groove.
that. Yeah.
Totally. And it was Carlos that was like, Sam has the bass line, and then he just started playing.
Gotcha.
And then the beauty there is his fills in between that.
Right. Okay, so we're going to keep going here. And by the way, Sam, we're still recording while this is going on. If you want to say something during this entire thing, if it's still playing, man, we'll just mention something if you've got a good story about it. Okay, so here we go. We're going to keep going. We're at 35 seconds. Okay, so stop this. We're at 1:02 now. Question for you. Okay,
Yes.
Now there's this part of the song where there's a little bit of a breakdown, right? Bass
Yeah.
drops out, kick pattern stops, right? Okay, well the bass comes back in, but the kick pattern stays out.
Stays out. Yeah.
Reason for that?
I don't know if I could really take credit for that, but maybe I can. I think
man.
it's still
it's just you and me here.
I think it's still kind of playing off of that bounciness. So, okay, the dynamic is kind of quieting a bit. We don't want it to totally break groove, but it can have the same impact because there's something else that's going to happen. So that whole just kind of to ban it, filling in what would be the kick drum pattern. I think that might have been a lot of Carlos happening in there in terms of not controlling, but suggesting what the guitars do in there to start creating this kind of woven thing. This, if you hit Dennett over here, Dennett pops out over there. That
Gotcha.
kind of
a stereotype thing.
Yeah, and letting the bass guitar be the kick drum for a sec.
Got it.
It's playing with the dynamics. It's really we're all playing the same pattern.
Right.
It's
Right.
like using different voices. You could voice that on a drum kit with, a few toms and what I'm playing.
Right.
Moving
on.
Right.
It's going to be a short segment here. The reason I stopped it right there, and I want to make a big deal out of this.
Okay.
We're at 1:09, and that's the first place in an ass-kicking rock song where there's a crash cymbal.
Yeah.
Now, that's unusual. That is unusual. The mind of an orchestrator in that type thing, you don't ever, unless you're looking for that type thing. I mean, come on, man. That's pretty creative, man, to not put a crash from the beginning of a flag-waving style rock song to there. Did you realize that?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. And sometimes if the track presents itself, I'll try to play out something or not play something on principle.
Okay.
To see what happens.
Uh-huh.
To see, okay, you're just being dumb. To just suggest that you don't use a ride symbol in this by virtue of not using a ride. But sometimes that crutch forces you to do something else. And the Interpol experience is either you didn't hit that cymbal hard enough and loud enough, or goddamn, stop hitting that cymbal.
It's extremes.
They won't let me be intuitive.
Right. I really hope the other two guys are going to listen to this interview. I hope they.
I wonder. They might listen to it solely for to see if I'm talking shit about them, and maybe they wouldn't. So then I'm free. But I love them to death. It's all with due respect, but like sometimes it feels that way. Like when I'm thinking, okay, hold back on the big rock accents and let the guitar do some expression. And then when I'm doing that, they're like, "Hey, can you live back there? Hello, can we get an accent, please?" I'm like, one day you do, one day you don't. You're driving me crazy.
Yeah. I think, though, you are speaking to probably 95% of our brethren here.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So we sympathize.
Because all those guitar players and
Yes.
drummers, too,
Uh-huh.
in their big brains.
Okay. Got another short segment here. Okay. So let's keep going. Okay. Tom pattern.
That's right. I defended that.
Okay, so that was one that they were sort of like, I don't know about this.
Well, this brings back a recollection of Carlos went ahead and did a really cool demo of the song on 4-track cassette. Just to get, he had an arrangement idea, and just to get it through, and he was articulating that part where it would be just bump, 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 and I'm like, no, man, no, this song's all groove.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, no, I'm not doing that.
Well, and you added some melodic sensibility by going to the different toms.
Yeah,
Right.
it's like, it's like, that's, again, let's not break the pattern.
Right.
And it's so funny, that becomes way too conventional.
Yeah.
It's like there's not a crash cymbal opening the song, and
Right.
we're not going to super standard right there. That's the beautiful way Carlos would contradict himself. He becomes so standard at times. It's just like, you're insane. Like, you want to like totally redefine the wheel, and then you're like, no, you defend it to the hilt.
Yeah.
And he was just like, but it should be. I was like, no, I don't care what you think it should be. If people are dancing, they're not stopping. I don't think they should stop it. Certain songs, maybe they should stop. And maybe it's like I use dancing as just a term of feeling the song.
Yeah.
Even if they're not literally dancing, you're going to bum them out. The groove becomes, if they're into all the, what I like to call the intellectual scope of the song, melodically translating and listening to Paul's lyrics, man, give them the bed to lie on or jump on.
Yeah. Nice, man. Yeah. Because the pattern that he was suggesting does create a sort of stop or it stops the forward momentum.
Yeah, it's accent, exclamation.
Right.
It's very orchestral, and it's like, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now we want to keep this moving.
Right. And it adds a melodic tone to it as well.
There's a dimensional thing because it's a bat boom.
Right. Yeah.
Chris Frantz, that's where that comes from.
Moving on. Okay, here we go. You knew I was going to stop there, didn't you?
Yeah.
You knew it, didn't I?
Knew it.
Yeah. No crash, man. Floor tom.
Why not?
Good. Hey, you know what? Don't say anything else. Let's just keep going. All right? Okay. Now, here's what I'm going to say. We had an add-on here from the first time through this section.
Right.
Okay? All right?
Right.
So we're back to the Bonham-style kick pattern, the bouncing kick pattern.
Yep.
But now there's an added 16th note hi-hat thing that goes to a tom.
Right.
Okay, now this is another great orchestration thing. In other words, we're building the song, right? Keeping the forward momentum going. Let's add something new there. Right? Was this another one of those things that, hey, man, this just feels good?
Yeah.
It sounds right. It feels good to play, too. It feels like it belongs there.
It feels like, and that's what happened. It felt like it tapped me on the shoulder and said, you know what to do here. Bat boom. It's like, I like to look at those things as like, that's what keeps me interested in keeping things basic at times. Because it's almost a little fill that's just kind of married into the movement.
Yeah.
It's not, you're not doing an accentuated
right,
whatever single stroke or paradiddle kind of thing. It's just a little embellishment, and it kind of gives it's just it feels like a fill, but like in the context of this beat.
Right.
You know what I mean?
It continues the build.
It
of
continues
the
to
song,
build
too.
the song. It's doing something. It's a dynamic thing, and Daniel would beat into everybody's head. Electronic music doesn't announce a transition. And
Fair enough.
When things come, and then like Boards of Canada or something like that, he would say, if Shaker will start on the one somewhere, and he's like, if you really listen to that music, it feels like the world has changed because it's so subtle, and things are moving so glacially.
Yeah.
And he was really into, whenever it could happen, whether it could or not, to try to find something that triggers a change like that, or just triggers not even a change, but like an accent,
right?
Something accentual, and it doesn't necessarily repeat itself throughout the song. And sometimes you can't build that. It just has to happen.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Moving on, we're going to listen to a little bit longer of a segment this time.
Cool.
Okay, we're at 2:47 on the track. And Sam, in the business that we're in, I like to sometimes call this kind of a groove the gig loser. How did you get this past the guys?
Oh, no. It's what they suggested to me and how I had to get it past not wanting to do it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's just one of those things where Daniel referenced, oddly enough, a Smashing Pumpkins song.
Okay,
I think it was,
there was like a template for this, yeah.
What's that, like Siva or something? It's off of Gish.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, yeah, I see where you're coming from, but I don't understand. And I was just doing this, just a very basic, rudimentary kind of pattern there. And he's like, oh, that's it. I was like, no, it's not. And it's just kind of that thing that stuck. And then I was like, let me come up with something better. I'll use it as a placeholder. And then next thing it's recorded.
It's recorded, yeah.
And I never liked it.
But though, man, let me tell you, the simplicity, like you said, the simplicity or the rudimentary aspect of it, man, it feels good under the hands to play that.
It does.
Feels
over
right.
time. Like, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
But, in a way, though, it's like, what are we doing here? Where am I? It would just throw me for a loop. Like, I don't get it. And I really had a hard time, like, figuring out where the one was going to happen out of that. And I used to use the worst kind of, like, landmarks to cheat because I lose count because it's just so numbifying.
Yeah.
And, bad monitors and all that. And, there would be so many times where I couldn't hear the kick drum, which was going to just take me out of it. And it would be frightening. And I would get so mad because I hate this drum part anyway. It should be something more solidified as a three-voiced drum pattern. Kick, snare, hi-hat, something. And it's just one of those things, like a quirk that, again, like, Daniel was just like, that's it. I'm like, no, Daniel, that's just me, like, blowing my nose. You know what I mean? It's just like,
right.
I'm just doing it. It's just like, that's something I would do to warm up. I mean,
sure.
it's just,
right.
It's something we do unconsciously.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, to go, oh, here, yeah, we're going to print that. It's like, no. But, you can't, sometimes you just have to choose your battles.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, with them liking that so much, I was handcuffed. I could never think of something past it. And then it's just like, oh, I guess it does work. And I'm just going to go upon faith. And it's just another funny thing that people who don't play drums have such bizarre drum ideas sometimes.
Yeah, well, it works on this for sure, man. And it's a signature part of this little bridge. That
it became,
yeah.
Much to my chagrin.
Moving on. We're keeping on.
It's in the things that she puts in my head. Her stories are boring and stuff. She's always calling my bluff. She puts the weights into my little heart, and she gets in my room and she takes it apart. She puts the weights into my little heart. I said she puts the weight into my little heart. She puts the weight.
Okay, all right, we're getting close to the end here on this, all right? Okay, now we've moved to we're starting to get to the outro of this song, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a ride pattern, and we've got a more of a traditional rock pattern. But it's got this syncopated snare drum thing that's happening in there now. And so now we're almost kind of calling on a totally different style. This is something that's more emblematic of almost like R&B. You can almost take that groove and put it inside of like an R&B style groove.
Well, that's kind of the idea, really, and maybe somehow channeled through Can. So it's kind of like, I mean, at the time, I always listen to R&B these days. At the time, I was delving back a little more, and Daniel had been playing a lot of Can for me, and finding the similarities in like what that guy was doing, and then kind of bringing it all back with, building a big rock outro.
Yeah.
So, I was glad that at the time I was kind of working on that kind of pattern, and that here we go,
and there it is.
So I was saved from doing that awfully like almost warm up pattern.
Yeah.
To like getting to really stretch. Because it was difficult to play because it was you had such a tendency to bash to how like punk rock the ending, and really what I learned going back on the Bright Lights kind of on that 15th anniversary thing was to play it more like an R&B guy and not bash it hell out of it. And man, it sang. Like I finally kind of got back to that intention, which was very frenetic but collected.
Well, and to embolden that point, you had the perfect opportunity here to wash out your ride, and you're not, man. You're playing ride ping pattern on this thing.
Full ping.
Yeah, and what kind of a cymbal is that? That is a great sounding cymbal, man.
That is a Sabian Rock Ride 20-inch.
Man, it sounds great on this
really
track,
great.
Man. Yeah.
I have to give Peter Catus some credit too, because there's some sweet compression happening.
Yeah, sure.
But you compress a bad cymbal, it's going to sound like a bad cymbal compressed.
That's true.
You compress a good cymbal, it's going to be God. Is tinging our brain. Ting, it just has such a. It's a definitive ride cymbal.
Yeah. In the words of Jeffrey Lebowski, the compression really tied the drums together.
So true.
So we've got about 40 seconds left. Guess keep going. Nice drum fill to finish it out with no crash.
No crash. Back on that floor tom.
Back on the floor tom. A short ending on a drum. Not even a short crash, or not even a grabbed or choked crash.
Nope.
Flat out ended on a drum.
Boom.
Yeah.
We got a lot of cymbal in there after all.
We did, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I think that ultimately, too, what's great about that song, drum-wise, is that without a lot of crashing going on, and that frequency happening more commonly throughout the track, it really does present the ride in a different light because it's such a relief to finally hear that voice.
Yeah.
And then, I often forget, like, the keyboard Rhodes part that's happening, which is really a beautiful timbre, and with the ride cymbal, and then all the high guitar parts, it becomes very musical.
Man, I knew that if you decided that it was cool to do this, that we would get into a conversation like this, because I knew that there had to be a lot of thought when it came to the individual parts of the song. You could take this song and you could give it to most drummers, and they could play pretty much the same groove or just a slight variation all the way through.
Yeah.
But there had to be a lot of thought between you guys to orchestrate these different parts to make it special, and to make it really, more than anything, it makes it Interpol.
Yeah, I think there's certain songs that, like, rhythmically it's going to be driven, by bass and drums.
Yeah.
It's just you could try to write that kind of song, but when it just reveals itself, and Carlos and I were just really on the same page, like, not as people.
Yeah.
But when it came to, like, playing together, our points of reference were very mutually respected, and we could do it. When we would reference, like, a Killing Joke kind of thing, or, like, he could play some Bonham, he could play some John Paul Jones, as well. So we could go into these, like, extreme opposite, points of reference. And the good thing about him, he didn't care about referencing anybody. He was unabashed about referencing people. He didn't care what you thought. He didn't care if you thought he was ripping off the guy from New Order, Peter Hook. He'd go, yeah, so what? Yeah, I did, because he's amazing. Do you write bass lines as good as him? No, I don't think you do.
You're right.
So it's just like, in a way, it was just like, please don't perpetuate that, my friend. We're really trying to, like, really move away from anything related to Joy Division, but in a way, he's right.
Well, what's the old adage? It's like the, good artists borrow and the great artists steal, I suppose,
Yeah. And but the thing is like, journalists, you're not really finding anything out, my friend. And you could go to Interpol and they're just starting out and bitch about them, about them ripping off Joy Division, and then what they do is the next British band that comes around, the next generation, they say, "Oh, you're just ripping off Interpol," and it's just like, you're full of shit. Leave that band alone.
Yeah,
leave them alone. And it commonly would be like, "So Sam, what do you think of the editors?" I was like, you know what? I think you should leave them alone because you want me to be angry at them. And you know what? I feel their fucking pain because you were saying you were saying I was ripping off Stephen Morris. And, so what if I was? Shut up. It's rock music. It's like Charles Thompson, better yet, Charles Thompson from the Pixies said, inherently, at the onset, rock and roll is highly unoriginal. At this point in time. So you pick up guitar, bass, and drums, you're already aping 80% of the, rock, postmodern music.
Yeah.
So please, let's stop that. And that's how great things expand,
Sure.
That's how something becomes something else, And, God, when we're all hanging out together without journalists, that's all we talk about is each other's music that we like.
Mm-hmm.
The great drum beats that so-and-so played, and how this, how that guitar player is just, has articulation that is just like, angelic or whatever, if Josh Homme came up to me and said, dude, you're ripping off this track, because I fancied, like, I kind of ripped off some Queens on the new record.
Yeah.
And I'd be, that's right, Josh. But please, do not hit me.
Yeah. Well, Sam, thank you for taking that little dalliance of going through obstacle 1, man. I think it's brilliant, man. I think
cool.
it's fantastic.
It's
Now,
fun.
Let's talk about a day in the life of Interpol on the road. And you don't have to go into too much detail, but I like to kind of find out how you guys do things and how you do things, because everybody's got a slightly different way that they approach things when they're on the road.
Yeah.
Okay.
Survival. Yeah.
Well, that is the key, man. I always say self-preservation.
Yeah.
Because when you're on, I've always said that when you're on the road for really any more than just a few days, you start getting into what I call you're in a suspended reality.
Very well put.
Yeah, it's what you are. You're in a suspended reality because life is still going on outside of you being on that bus or in these airports or whatever that you're doing.
Exactly.
But you're so locked in and focused on making a day happen with that. So let's kind of start from the beginning and let's take it from like a bus style tour.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't need we are fortunate enough to kind of graduate to a bus rather soon.
Yeah.
And what I realized was this is more than just a means of conveyance, man. This is
home.
It's a roving apartment.
It's home, yeah.
And why would I ever want to stay in a hotel or get on an airplane? And everybody was still loved it, and especially back at the beginning was because you could still drink and smoke weed or whatever you were doing.
Yeah.
and get to the next place. And after, a few years into touring, people started getting, I don't want to be on the bus so long, so I'm going to fly to the next place if it's a 20-hour ride. Or, I don't want to shower at the venue. I'm just going to go to a day room. And I'm like, well, I'm not leaving the bus. I'm not getting a hotel room. I'll shower in the venue, and I can put all my things on the bus, and I know where they're at, and I'm not going through airport security or just packing up, a day bag to go to a hotel to just shower and it just seems so interruptive, like every day. It's the worst part of touring. And what you want is stability, and, you want the common. And that's, to me, it only makes sense that I have it here and it moves and gets me to the next place. So if I don't have to fly somewhere, if I have the luxury to just take my time with the bus, or if I don't have to get a hotel room, it gets to the point where it's like, I can't eat this slice of pizza again.
Yeah.
That's like, it's a hotel. Oh my God. I remember when this was a novelty, and I'm sure some people would say, just shut the hell up, because that's a pretty good looking bed that you're getting to sleep, and I know that there's a privilege to it all, but I'd prefer to be in that bunk on the bus.
Yeah. Especially if you
constantly
get a good driver.
moving. You get a good driver, and just the whole romance of just gotta go, going to play the next show, gotta keep moving, and in that suspended reality, I love that.
Yeah.
I don't want to try to sync that with my home life, because it doesn't mirror it at all. I'm not going on vacation.
Right.
I am working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm lucky enough to where it's, playing drums in front of people that like this band. But I have to be reminded, too, that it is work.
Yeah.
Because or else I'm not going to be lazy. Or I could just play drums at home.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I don't need to make this big statement. But it's work, and it has to feel like it.
Yeah. So let's say you pull in to a new city. Let's say you pull into Dallas, Texas, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And you're on a bus. Do you try to do anything in particular when you're out and you're on a bus, as far as do you try to maintain normal daytime, like normal hours where you sleep at night, get up at a regular time in the morning? Or we've had some guests on the show that like to kind of flip things around.
That's what I do.
Yeah, to where they will try to get up later in the day so that the show will be sort of in a midday, like a productive part of their daytime.
That's what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, I'm already spent. At 9 o'clock at night, I at home, I get up sometimes at 4 in the morning.
Right.
Because what I could do is, that's still the witching hour still happening. So, instead of staying awake until 4 to come in here and do something, wake up at 4, have a cup of coffee, and now to be as alert as you are in the morning, but it's still the witching hour.
Yeah.
And when I do that, though, I go to bed at 9:00 at night. So there's you can try to build all that in, that kind of romance of evening, but you can't do that on the road, man. I can't be waking up before in the morning and have to play a show at 9.
Right.
So I try not to wake up before noon.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes if I get up too early, which I'll just do, by virtue of habit or, discomfort or whatever, I try to get back to sleep.
Yeah.
Just try to, and usually it's no problem to get on that,
right.
Wake up at noon, but it's the one time where you don't feel like a loser.
Yeah, it's a combination of doing the right thing, and then you're also practicing some self-preservation at the same time.
Yeah, you can't. I mean, sleep deprivation is so unhealthy, and man, I'm sure in your time,
yeah,
you've missed some hours. It's not good.
It's not good.
And another thing too is the adrenaline too after a show. Yeah. It's impossible. Even if if I had been up too long, it's impossible to go right to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to. It's like that's clocking out.
Yeah,
Miller time.
Yep. There's a process. There's as much as there's a process of trying to ramp up and getting ready for the show. There's also always that process of winding down afterwards.
Yeah, warming down is a big thing in athletics.
Yeah, sure is.
And playing drums, I mean, Paul warms down his voice.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. He was, for years it was just warming up, but then he does a warm down, and he's an athlete as well. He's a practicing boxer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he doesn't fight, but he uses it as his workout. And
keeps everybody else in the band in line too.
I'll take him down. Come on, right. Banks. I'll give it to you. Let's go to work, pal. I don't know what that is relevant to his warm down. Yeah, just like what he does, exercising.
Sure.
By mode of boxing, it's so intense. You can't stop. You'll do damage.
Yeah.
To your body.
So okay, all right. Now let's say that you're up and about by like 1:30. What's the next thing you do? Because sound check is most likely going to be later in the day, like around 5-ish or so.
Exactly. I got a few hours to kill.
What do you do?
Coffee. Really good pour over coffee. Some place where I actually want to sit there for a minute and maybe try to figure out if I want to go to a museum or an art gallery or an H&M to get some new underwear.
Yeah.
Or, kind of cool age and fatherhood will do this, like looking for like really unique toy stores.
Yeah.
Finally bringing something back from somewhere that, you had to acquire in that place, that you just can't get on the internet.
Sure.
Or whatever. Or just walking around.
Just
Simply
to get moving.
Just to get moving and just to look at what's around, kind of maybe dancing around the forest and going into the trees a little bit, but just to kind of get a feel what's happening. Or, doing those things that take up the whole day, going to a museum.
Yeah.
And this is all I can do today. I'm going to just dive in here or park bench.
I'll say this. I know that if I don't get up and get out and about a little bit, it wears me out not to.
Yeah, and it's not good emotionally either.
Right.
You need, because ultimately I just would love to just be home and then kind of transport
right
to the show. So I could sit there and pine away or just do what anybody else would do. And just try to like make the best of where you're at.
Yeah.
Take a look, see what's around.
Okay, so we're working our way up to sound check now. Now, every band does completely different versions of sound check. Some bands like to get in there and just like, my monitors are working, everything sounds good, 10 minutes later we're done. Other groups, man, and I'll give you a perfect example of this.
Mm-hmm.
About a year and a half ago, I was over here at the Georgia Theater with Adam Deitch from Lettuce.
Okay.
They were playing over there. He said, man, before we do the interview, I want you to come over to the sound check. the sound check was almost 2 hours long.
Whoa.
Because they were actually writing and recording during the sound check.
Oh,
we
right.
went back onto the front lounge of the bus and listened to some of it. He wanted us to see what they were doing.
Wow.
So what kind of sound check do you guys do?
It's nowhere near that.
Yeah.
That would be a nightmare.
I would think
to
so
be
too.
We couldn't write.
Yeah.
We've tried to rehearse a couple new songs a few times, and just with house crew around and stopping and watching, it just can't get it done.
Yeah.
Just can't get it done. So, I think we're pretty neurotic over our personal mixes, which everybody pretty much is.
Mm-hmm.
And usually what we do is ask our sound man, what was the weakest song the night before? And he'll say, it'll be this. It was this, just give me the verse. Or what do you need to hear, Harley?
Mm-hmm.
So it's always him first, and then once we get that sorted, it maybe if we're gonna work a new song into the set that we rehearsed, pre-tour, but just let's play it, let's get it up to speed, but nothing like never constructing a song,
right?
Mm-hmm. But everybody wants to get off the stage as quick as possible.
Good. So some of your sound checks might be as short as 15 minutes then.
Ideally, yeah.
Right. Gotcha. Now, for me, the kind of most tenuous or strangest part of a road gig day is that time after sound check before the gig.
Yeah, it's awkward.
It's awkward, isn't it? Because you've got somewhere normally between 3 and 4 hours a lot
Right.
of times, right? What do you do?
It has to be timed perfectly. Ideally, it would be great to like shower up and maybe eat while you're in your bathrobe. Be really comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
But man, if you miss that 15-minute window, I can't relax that much before I'm going to work.
Yeah.
Where I'm about to have to be the watchdog of, rhythmic output in front of a few thousand people.
Mm-hmm.
So what's really important to me, I guess, mostly is at the end of that post-sound check time, pre-show time, I need to be at the venue an hour for the show just to be in that space, even if it's in the dressing room. And then I could kind of meditate or just kind of zone out.
So you practice meditation? I do.
Not very well, but I'm working on it.
I don't think anybody that practices meditation thinks they do it very well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, how do we really know?
That's exactly right. Do you have a practice pad or anything back there to warm up?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on how I'm feeling.
Mm-hmm.
How what if I don't feel very strong or it's early in a tour, I don't feel my stamina is up to speed. It very basic just to get literally the forearm nice and loose.
Singles, doubles, paradiddles.
A little bit of everything. Mm-hmm. Even if it's just singles, not paying attention, just to have the movement going on. I for a while had a little Roland electronic kit backstage, which was fun because it doesn't sound like a kit. It's just kind of, and you could spread out a little more.
Yeah.
So what I got into doing was playing, 4 on the floor at a very high tempo for about 10 minutes straight.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's still fun, but it's very aerobic.
Yeah.
And discipline,
Yeah.
Do a click track, just to where it's like punk rock uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah.
Just outside of that, what would be fast tempo for Interpol.
Yes.
Just in something where, oh man, it's going to get me right in that, And it's like, okay, I got to bat a little,
Yeah.
And then usually at the end of 10, and then the warm down from that, like by the time I go on stage, it's like I'm playing with feathers and the songs are slow and I could just cut right through, it's great.
Okay, so now we're up to gig time. Okay.
Yeah.
These days when you guys are headlining, what is a typical show? Hour and a half?
Is it close to hour and a half with encore?
Hour and a half with encore.
We want to give everybody their money's worth, but
sure,
want them wishing for 30 seconds more.
Gotcha. Now,
trying to do that anyway.
Couple of questions about mid-gig. Okay. Now, I know that you got a pretty good catalog to pull from now.
Yeah, now it's 6 records.
6 records. And we're going to talk about that, the new record here in a little while also, okay? With the variety of music that you have to pull from, do you guys either A, play to any clicks or use any clicks for references?
Yes.
Sequences, anything like that?
For a while, we had a... Okay, the guys at Native Instruments in Berlin said, oh my God, your playback rig is bigger than Depeche Mode's.
That sounds like the punchline to a joke.
It does, right?
Uh-huh.
And to me, I was embarrassed because I realized how unnecessary it was.
Yeah.
And that was kind of that was like Our Love to Admire, the 3rd record, and that's where Carlos D just went crazy.
Yeah.
And he insisted that every keyboard track he laid down was played back live. And to where Harley, our sound man, Harley Zinker, who's been with us since day one, would tell him, you're not going to hear it tonight. Nobody's going to hear that wine glass Mellotron sample.
Right.
It's just, sorry, dude, it's gone. Doesn't matter how loud you, like, this is a live venue. This is a live arena. Like, you're not in it's vanity, man. It can't be heard. It can only be seen, and it's ugly.
Yeah, right.
And when, it's kind of funny, he was bragging, like, yeah, we have more playback than Depeche Mode. I was like, that's, what? You know how ridiculous that is? Depeche Mode are a synth band.
Yeah.
Okay, and we have more processing power than them? That's stupid. To me, it's just kind of, we're missing the plot here.
So it's pared down now from that.
There's barely any. I think there was a couple songs on the last tour that I insisted on having a click for.
Yeah.
But some of the songs on the record that we did are without click.
Right.
And we kind of, it's been weird, like in the trajectory of this band, in the existence of this band, it's either been like all or nothing.
Yeah.
It's been like, if we're going to play to a click, it's going to be layered playback, like intense, complicated keyboard passages, and me just being dead on that thing, not jerking it whatsoever, to like, okay, let's be on the click, but let's jerk the click.
Right.
Kind of do this.
Manipulate it.
Tight, but like kind of, give it the illusion of a little swag.
Right.
And then to like, let's record to tape. No click. No comping. Get the take right, or play it over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So and recently, getting to that point, then that became that was dictated by Dave Fridman.
Okay, gotcha. So we're at the gig. We're in the gig right now. Something I want to do before we go to the after show kind of routine is give us just a quick rundown of what gear you're currently playing, such as drums, cymbals, head sticks.
Heads are Aquarian.
Are you a fan of Mr. Chris Brady out there at
Man, what a nice dude.
He's a sweetheart.
Sweetheart, right?
He's the greatest guy ever.
He's so, easy breezy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really, really like him a lot. And they have a cool selection of heads. They all do different things.
I've said it on the show several times before. I feel like that as we speak right now, Aquarian is making the best products that they've ever made. And if you can't find something that you like out of their offerings, I don't know what's going to please you.
Yeah, nothing will.
Yeah.
Because they could do it. It does it all.
It does.
Those are reflector heads.
Mm-hmm.
It's
amazing. Yeah. Drums.
I was with CNC for a while.
Uh-huh.
But I just signed with Gretsch.
Paul Cooper, my brother, down in Ridgeland, South Carolina.
Yep. And I deal with Andrew Shreve, who used to be at Peisty.
Yeah, that's out in the West Coast now.
Exactly, yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that is a big part of Gretsch, come on, anytime, any place, anywhere. But I was good friends with Andrew when he was at Peisty.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, wait a minute. I'm at CNC. The guy who's brought me on is gone.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like I'm not needy. I don't need them to call me or keep track of me or anything. But the guy, so I really, and I'm playing drums that are, Gretsch clones. They're like unabashed. These are our Gretsch style because this wood and this wood layered with this wood, and this is the bearing edge on, it's like Gretsch copies. And I was like, well, okay, my guy's gone. I'm playing Gretsch copies. I love Andrew, like we're friends, and they're Gretsch. So without disparaging an ounce to what CNC does, actually, it's I'll still use. I won't sell my CNC drums.
Right.
I'll still use them. It just didn't make sense.
Yeah. Let me tell you, you don't have to sell me or any of the listeners on Gretsch, man. That's what I've been playing since 1989. I've got right now 5 sets of USA Customs that I use.
There you go.
Some in storage, some in the studio, that sort of stuff. It's, man, I mean,
amazing.
You don't need to say. Have you been down to the factory down in Ridgeland?
I haven't.
Let's talk. Let's talk after the show.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I bet. I can only imagine.
This new tour that you guys are going on. Are you going to be playing the USA Customs or the Broadcasters?
Broadcasters.
All right.
Yeah, unless I decide not to bring a kit overseas and just so if I have to play USA Custom, so be it.
Oh, so be it, man. I know. Wow. What a step down.
Yeah,
right?
It's
Wow.
awful. God.
Yeah.
Who do I write to?
I know.
The cool thing that Gretsch does with their endorsees is that they supply the rental houses with kits that are just for the artists.
Oh, that's nice. That's
so
very nice.
They remain kind of unbeaten. The rental,
the
drum kit could be a nightmare.
Just another side note about we're sitting here talking about the laurels of Gretsch, like they need any more laurels. But
right.
Let me tell you another thing about those damn drums. Man, everybody makes great drums, but there is an intangible about those drums that record, to me, unlike anything else, man. I mean, the
phenomenal
recording drums.
I still have simple room recording that I did with stereo microphone at post-recording drum tracks for Our Love to Admire. So this is going back to 2005 or 6, and it's still some of the best sounding drums. And it was sad that it wasn't recorded to
right.
But just kind of just recording a random workout. It's like those toms were perfectly pitched and thunderous.
Yeah, amazing.
Had just such a beautiful release, like boom. Just great cutoff.
There's also something about the feel. There's a certain feel
when
you play.
When
Gretsch
you strike
drums.
those drums,
There's something about
doesn't
it.
matter what head you have on it.
Yeah,
it's the bearing edge, man. It's how the head to edge contact.
Yeah, and also I think it has something to do on the USA Customs with the die-cast hoops. There's die-cast hoops. Top and bottom.
Can't forget about those crazy hoops.
Yeah. Man, there's something about the intangible of those different things that you're talking about, man. That's just it's Gretsch all the way through.
It's beautiful physics, right?
Yeah, it's hard to emulate that, man.
Yeah, it's a beautiful formula, and the tension and weight and all that, and well, I mean, while we're at it, the gray primer,
right? yeah.
Not only aesthetically pleasing, but there's something to the primer that they use.
Yeah,
it's like the final little, the thing that you wouldn't think would be intrinsic to a tone, but
yeah. It's the little, when you get a whole bunch of little things together, they add up to a big thing.
That's right.
So cymbals, what are you playing these days?
Dream.
Interesting, man. So now you traditionally known for thinner, darker cymbals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, back to a ride ping.
Yeah.
Man. Moon ride. Oh man.
What size?
Either 20 or 22.
Gotcha.
Depending on what the track is or whatever.
Right.
But man, I love cymbals that don't give in to the wash.
Right. Some you can lay into, but
some
you can still get the ping.
You could. I love when it's underneath the ping. So okay, that it's being excited.
Mm-hmm.
But like I'm at the point now where if I want total wash, I'll play with a big thin crash cymbal.
Right.
I'll ride on the edge of that for that. I'm just at that point.
Yeah.
And a bad habit that I had as a younger drummer, still within Interpol, like at the beginning of our career, was It was just lean. I would get lazy and like lean on the wash.
Right.
If I just didn't feel the energy, and it's like so there's a bad connotation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where stylistically, you know, when it works, there's like nothing like it.
Right. It creates that bed of sound
It's
that's
bad.
underneath.
It's excitement. You know,
Uh-huh.
it's like in synthesis, how, you know, when you excite the signal, you know, there's a certain thing that happens. You know, it's just very tingly and, you know, all that good thing, man. It's like it's our version of a pad, distorted pad, if you will.
Yeah.
A sustained.
Yeah. And that's a good comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when it's perfect, it's great. But you know, lately I've just been like, I'm playing a ride cymbal with a thick wooden stick. You know, it should sound like a ride cymbal. God damn it.
Yeah.
You know.
Now, while we're on it, sticks. What are you using?
Big Firth.
Okay. Size?
5B.
Okay.
5A. Man, I'm dyslexic. I can't remember.
Yeah.
It's a thinner one.
It'd be the 5A. then.
5As,
That's
yeah.
what it would be. Yeah.
Yeah, wood tip. White.
Right on. Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah. Painted white.
Just because they said they have them. So
Just
I said, I'll take
because.
them. And, you know, everybody would think that Interpol guy is going to take the black sticks. Because you think so, I'm doing white.
So, Sam, now, got some exciting stuff coming up. Got the new album that's getting ready to drop in a few months, right?
Yeah, in August something.
Title?
Marauder.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. We all know the business. Once the album comes out, you got to support it.
Oh yeah,
tell us about where you're going to be over the next few months, because this show is going to post in early June.
In early June?
Uh-huh.
Well, how early? Because
like probably the 4th.
Okay. Well, good. Listen to the podcast and then watch us on Colbert.
Oh, right on. And what day is that, on the 4th?
The 4th, yeah.
Right on. Boy, man, we couldn't have planned this better.
That's right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
And
you
know, the label always wants it to make sense. Like what you're promoting, can't waste an ounce.
Yeah.
Well, here we go.
There we go.
Perfect timing, my friend.
Okay, now, next thing. All right, you guys are going to do a series of European dates in June, right?
In June, some festival shows, some headlining shows, but ultimately leading up to opening up for The Cure for their Hyde Park show, commemorating 40 years.
Incredible.
40 years.
Mm-hmm.
You just think that it used to be only the Rolling Stones would, you know, kind of occupy that shelf of like 4 decades, and now it's the definitive like alt rock icon.
Yeah.
I mean, Robert Smith, the guy with the hair and the eyeliner,
lipstick,
and the lipstick and the unique voice, and quite a shredding guitar player.
No. Seriously.
Oh yeah.
Who would have known that?
Oh man, he can, and it's amazing because he does it. You don't realize it happened because he does it within the context of a Cure song.
Okay.
Live,
Yeah.
and it's just like he alludes to. I mean, it's a Schecter guitar too. And it's just like, man, that guy. The best thing, we toured with them in 2004, and they did like a touring festival called the Curiosa Festival. There was a B stage, and it was the Rapture, Mogwai, Interpol, the Cure on one stage, and a bunch of other bands on the other. And you know, getting to know him, hanging out with him a little bit, and like after shows, his musical selections were pretty heavy. You know, just not what you'd expect.
In fact, they're listening to Mahler 3.
Okay, it's just like he loved Smashing Pumpkins.
Okay.
I remember him just blaring Gish. And just always making, if other people were DJing, just always leaning over and appreciating something you wouldn't think that Mr. Smith would like.
Right.
You know, and it just, you know, just really you learn your lesson. Like, no more, you know, book cover judging. Stop it. You know, because the surprises are amazing.
Yeah.
You know?
So
when, you know, Robert Smith rocks, he's like a goat throwing rocker. And he plays golf and poker like nobody's business.
Don't play poker with Robert Smith, right?
Fuck that, you'll lose your money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that people say that this podcast gives no practical advice. There's your practical advice. Don't play poker with Robert Smith.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So now, Sam, I don't know if you know dates yet or exact ranges of time. When does the North American tour?
We'll be embarking on select North American dates
Right.
in September, mid-September sometime,
Uh-huh.
which will go through until Christmas.
Right.
We'll be bouncing around the States and, the Western world.
Gotcha.
And then, next year, 2019,
It's on.
it's on.
Yeah.
So, we usually, if things go well, every record we put out, being an American band, we usually try to hit this, do the rounds like 2 or 3 times.
Sure.
So we'll see what happens. But, we'll be available.
For bookings,
That's
call.
right.
Right, yeah. And everybody can see these dates at interpolnyc.com.
Yeah,
correct?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. How do I know your website and you don't?
No, I know the website
No, yeah.
as to what information you'll find.
Yeah, right. Gotcha.
It's
yeah.
about to be revamped, I believe.
Okay.
Right after the podcast.
Good
Around
deal.
that time, yeah.
Good deal. All right. Well, hopefully you'll be coming through Atlanta doing one of our fine venues somewhere.
We've always played the Tabernacle.
Man,
Love it.
Swear to God, one of the best venues to play at in the world, man.
I'm with you.
It is a fantastic venue,
It's
man.
fun to play, and it's fun to hang out on afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem like it, Sam, but we've been going for over 2 hours, man.
Man, my partner, my woman in there, first of all, when I was discussing with her, we have a very interesting relationship. This is the first, my ex-wife, my child's mother, is a fashion photographer.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of overlap. Like, she kind of understood the travel aspect,
Mm-hmm.
and how it can be grueling, and she understood the fun of it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
she ran it, she knew a lot of people and music, and she photographed a lot of bands and actors. So there was still, we didn't do exactly the same thing, but she had an appreciation. There was an understanding, a little bit of a parallel. And she traveled the world a lot. Now, my lovely woman, Lee, could give a shit.
So we could be out here all day. She's just
and it's just like, y'all being there talking about music and drums. I don't have to come in there for any reason, do I? You don't need anything from me at all. And it's just like, no, not at all. She's like, good, you could stay in there as long as you.
Good deal.
It's kind of interesting to be with someone who definitely has creative leanings. She's an excellent. She will not admit it, but she's an excellent artist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's people who can paint, and there's people who can paint, and she's got something, and she's almost like has like this level of humility that's like equal to like Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
She does not brag, and even when she has the right to. She just does not brag about anything. She does it for purpose. She's very pragmatic.
Yeah.
And so it's funny to where there is this like disconnection. Like, there ain't no rock star living here. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, she respects the working musician.
That's about that. You really can't ask for anything more than that.
You know what? Because when they love the rock star, you're screwed.
That's, man, well said.
Right?
Well said.
Because here we are. I mean, we have a common friend, and that's why I'm sure you asked him, and then I obviously gave a positive reply, because Patrick Ferguson is salt of the earth,
and he will love hearing his name on the show.
Patrick Ferguson. Hey, Patrick Ferguson. He has a sweet voice too.
He does. I promised him that I would text him as soon as we got finished to tell him how it went.
Yeah. I love that guy.
Yeah.
Don't get to see him enough, but think about him all the time.
Yeah. He's a
warm soul.
Yes, he is.
But yeah, like you end up with people who buy into the myth, and either become greatly disappointed at how normal you are, or want the next dude.
Yeah. That hits the next level of rock star.
Yeah,
so to
or
speak.
just like, I want to go taste that one.
Yeah.
I mean, guys do it too. It's just a thing. When you're, fall in love with the extension and not the person, then it's not going to last.
Yeah.
And and then there's other relationships too where it does run too tight of a parallel. So there ends up being not competition for success or one-upping each other, but competition for time.
Yeah.
To do those endeavors, and being married to someone who, in terms of the time that it took to express herself creatively, conflicted with mine.
Mm-hmm.
And then, well, who's right? Who's, well, I was first. Well, no, I don't care. It's just, so it becomes like you become battling over, it becomes really awfully egotistical, and you lose the plot. And finally just being with someone who likes I work, she likes the fact that I'm successful and that I work, but she don't care about anything else.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful.
It's also got to be kind of nice also that knowing coming into it what you do, I'm sure, and this is no reflection on you, Sam. You're a wonderful guy. As your Wikipedia says, you're easily the most friendly person in Interpol, but she's got to enjoy the times also that she knows when you're going to be gone for a little while.
See, that's my whole thing. I'm like, okay, really, here's what you get. If I'm a monogamous, I'm like, I either traditionally have played the field only to run into someone's arms and beg them not to let me go.
Yeah.
Like, I would have fun getting there, but ultimately I never wanted to date too many people for too long. I just want to, where's my partner?
Yeah.
Old fashioned that way.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the point I was going to make?
About possibly giving her some time knowing that you're going to be gone for a few weeks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. Like, what more could you want with having monogamous but autonomous relationship?
Right.
Knowing that you could, if you need the security of knowing that you have a mate who's going to be faithful to you, if you want that, or if it's cool for, they got polyamorous. That's cool, but still those people have their partners.
Right.
Still, multiple sex partners or not, they have their mate partner, and I'm pretty monogamous, like just one person. But I enjoy being away. I've turned that frown upside down. Like, there's a part of it, like at the onset, where I have no choice. I have to be here. So all the things that I cannot do at home, I get to do without hurting anybody's feelings or ignoring anyone.
Yeah.
My child included.
Sure.
And to say, hey, partner, on the other side, you have the same thing. Like, you have my trust, you have my faith, and now here's my freedom too.
Right.
You get to experience it on this side.
Just out of curiosity, on longer tours.
Yeah.
Do you ever fly her out?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a must.
Yeah.
We don't want that autonomy to go too long now.
Gotcha.
Because, never mind, finding another mate. You don't want to be alone.
Sure, yeah.
Especially my woman.
Yeah.
Lee would just be like, oh, no, man, you've been gone way too long, Sam. I can't do her accent very well.
She's local then.
Oh, man, she's from Valdosta.
Oh, okay. That's, man, where we're at right now is like New York City compared to Valdosta.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no, she's, but, still, she's a Southern oddball.
Yeah.
You can't, you think you might be able to pick her out, or describe her from, there's definitely, we all have, every region has a stereotype, and, aside from her nice Southern slow Georgia drawl, she's an enigma.
Okay, that's the perfect way to lead into something that we do on this show that is often imitated but never duplicated.
All right.
I do a little quick round of questions that we like to call the Drummer's Weekly Groovecast Rorschach Test.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and you're going to be a part of it,
All
Sam.
right, I'm here.
So what I've got here is I've got a series of 20 short questions that I'm going to ask you. I don't want you to think about this too much. As soon as I give you the question, right off the top of your head, tell me what you feel.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, here we go. Drum heads, single ply or double ply?
Single.
What is your favorite country to tour?
Holland.
Live performance preference, with a click, with a sequence, or with nothing?
Ooh, nothing.
PC or Mac?
Mac.
What's your go-to snare drum if you could only have one?
Keplinger.
I've got one of those too.
Yeah.
I've got one too.
You see?
Yeah. Up all night or up at the crack of dawn? Kind of answered this one a little
Yeah, I did. I've been doing crack of dawn these days because it's just like being up all night.
Bonham or Moon?
Bonham. I love Keith Moon too, but Bonham.
Text or phone call?
Text.
In-ear monitors or wedges?
Wedges.
What's your favorite hobby?
I don't believe in hobbies.
Good answer.
Mm.
What is
I just choose to suck at everything I do.
What is your favorite drum sound on record? Now, not necessarily just yours, but just all around.
All around. John Bonham, man. It's God. Right up into right. I mean, you could just pick if you're just talking about sound. I mean, pick any record, any phase of their career. But the later it got, man, it became more than just that. Ambient. Like he only wanted one microphone.
Right.
The whole thing. Like no engineer is going to control me dynamically.
Right.
So the adage is they convinced him to use 3. When they started adding some closer mics too, you heard a little bit different side of him, with a more direct, fatter sound. Like, okay, I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you right now. Wait. Rover.
Okay.
That's my favorite Bonham sound. It goes from flat and dry and fat. And then as soon as they kick into that chorus on the drum fill, the one of the drum fill, ba boom boom ba boom boom ba, room mics come in.
Yeah.
It's like, wow. So you still have that, familiar John Bonham, the bombast of room mics, but there's that drier. It's like, late 70s.
Yeah.
Still playing, kind of tapped into that drier, more round sound.
Good call.
So yeah, that's it.
Good call.
Yeah.
Ballpark figure. How many cymbals do you own?
About 100.
Sports. You love them or hate them?
I hate them.
Sounds like you have a favorite team that might be suffering.
I don't know. I'm never up on a season particular, but I don't know. There's I'm not the biggest sport fan, but then one day I was talking about how I am not a football fan and was talking about the game, and then people were saying, "Well, wait, what do you mean you don't like it? What do you know the rules of the game? Like, what do you?" And I was like, "I don't know how I know."
Well, now being originally from Philly, do you have any loyalties to like Eagles, Flyers,
There
Phillies?
is all the Sixers, everything.
Yeah,
There is just from childhood, and luckily at the age I'm at and the time I was a kid, they were killing it. All those teams. There was one year in the 70s, or maybe like around 1980, 79, 80, where every team made its playoff, the equivalent of its playoff game.
Yeah.
So the baseball team made it to the pennant or the playoffs. It wasn't the pennant game. The pennant game is within each league, right?
Right, yeah, within the National League. And
Right,
the
so
American League.
Philly was either winning the pennant
Uh-huh.
or getting to the playoffs. Same with the Fly, or they were winning the games, the series, the final.
And at that time, the Flyers were just beating the hell out of everybody too.
Oh, man,
literally.
Broad Street Bullies.
Yeah.
My aunt, my mother's sister,
Yeah.
was the big hockey fan.
Yeah.
So whether you liked it or not, you're going to her house and the Flyers were on. That's
You're
what you're
watching
watching.
the Flyers.
I didn't mind, but a lot of our women folk
Yeah.
were just like, No.
Practicing drums. I do it every day, or what the hell is that concept?
What the hell is that concept?
Good enough. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
If you were not a pro drummer, what vocation would you pick?
If I wasn't a pro drummer, I'd be a professional drum technician.
All right.
Probably.
Yeah. What's your favorite major band to open for?
To open for? Well, we haven't done it that much. You know, The Cure was great. We did some... Actually, people were on the fence when we did this. And we all actually had the best time of our lives was opening for U2.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of fans were like, why are you doing that? And it's like, because I don't listen to my mom anymore. I do what I want.
Oh, and it doesn't get really any bigger than that.
And it's just like, well, because I don't want to just play for you my whole life, young lady.
Yeah.
I remember it was a young girl giving me hell.
Uh-huh.
For not speaking French like the other guys. And why are you playing with U2? I don't understand. And you don't speak I don't want to talk to you no more. U2, yeah.
Fiction or nonfiction?
It depends. Really, that's a hard one for me just to go. Right now I'm reading nonfiction, so just go nonfiction.
Got it. Keep Manhattan, just give me that countryside, or darling, I love you, give me Park Avenue.
Fuck you, New York City. Fuck you, but I love you though.
Overall mood of Interpol. Surprisingly upbeat, or the anticipated stoic gloom and doom?
That's surprisingly upbeat.
That's what I get.
With a little sprinkle of that other stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I got a couple extra credit questions for you here.
Shoot.
Okay. Social media. Useful tool or the root of all evil?
That's the root of all evil, man. People aren't talking to each other anymore.
Mm-hmm. And then this one might take a little bit of thought here. What movie should have Interpol provided the soundtrack to?
The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover.
Oh, wow, man. Okay.
Yeah.
That's a dark movie, dude.
Sure is one of my favorite.
Yeah. I
thought that would have been cool.
Mr. Fogarino, you passed the test.
Oh.
I was a little worried about you, man, but you did great.
Cool.
Man, Sam, is there anything else you want to say to these folks?
Thanks.
Oh, man, thank you for having me.
Yeah. It's really cool. It's great.
Oh, I had a blast, man. It's been one of my favorite interviews.
Cool. Yeah, this is really... I forgot what we were doing.
Well,
in a good way. That's the idea, right? It's a conversation.
Right? We're just talking. We're hanging out.
It's good.
The concept of this show from the get-go has just been guys hanging out at the drum shop.
That's cool.
Right?
It's cool.
Yeah.
You know, there's something I need to talk about, though.
Yeah,
One sec.
let's do it.
You know, I was reading... What was I reading? I was on my Flipboard, kind of just on my phone, and I found this article, and Nick Mason from Pink Floyd put together a trio and played some early Pink Floyd songs. And he did it with a couple side guys that either played with Pink Floyd live, or I think one guy actually was like a sideman for David Gilmour at one time. So it was kind of relative to the core of Pink Floyd. So automatically, this article is deprecating towards drummers and saying that, you know, really it's like, you know, let's be truthful. You don't want to hear a solo record from a drummer. Sorry, Ringo. And it's like, wait a minute. Okay, why do journalists and other musicians assume that first day drummer, only a drummer? Okay, now today, like I read that last night, and today I was going through some 12-inch singles I have, and there's a track called Mustafa Dance, which is the instrumental version of Rock the Casbah by The Clash. Essentially, what you hear is every contribution that Topper Headon gave to the song, which is the drums, the bass, and the piano. He wrote the song. He wrote their biggest charting hit. And he was just simply content to be the drummer in a band. But he was a musician. He wrote music. Bill Berry wrote Losing My Religion.
Mm-hmm.
from what Michael Stipe says, at least he wrote a big part of it.
Yeah.
And so, but once you have sticks in your hands, it's like, as a joke, between drummers and other musician friends on the inside, that it's fine. That's our little vernacular that we play with. But people are people, and just to make an assumption that the drummer is really less than, by virtue, some days I just don't care. But some days it's like, hey, asshole who wrote this article, go listen to what Topper did when you were still sucking your thumb, right?
Mm-hmm.
And before, have you written that novel yet? By the way, journalist, you are okay. Yeah. You are. Let's face it. You are not only you not a drummer. You're left to criticize one. That's pretty bleak.
Yeah.
But it's like, wait a minute. This man wrote a big part of what the Clash are known for, and doesn't really scream for the credit, and never really receives it at the same time. It's just that whole this kind of we have these learned, notions of the context of a band and what the singer should be or who the singer is, either for the better or for worse. But really what it comes down to is what gets my goat. It's just a form of discrimination. It's not hurtful like a lot of things are going on in the world.
Right.
Not as bad. I'm not crying in that way at all. I'm not being wronged. And Topper Hedden or Nick Mason are not being wronged. It's just a little kind of a social disgrace.
I can't remember who said this, and I'll have to paraphrase it also. But something that lends to that notion is there has to be some sort of a subliminal bias, because also 99% of the time we're at the back of the stage also.
Yeah. It's weird how it's so important, but it kind of gets just pushed off to the side or to the rear. And, what kind of gets me, the worst thing I ever hear is, man, we couldn't see you.
Yeah.
You sounded so good, but we couldn't see you. And it's ego aside, if there's not a drummer on stage, there better be a whole hell of a lot of other movement, because it's going to be a boring gig. So if it's a track band or R&B band, there better be a lot of dancing going on to fill up that space.
Yeah.
Because in the simplest of settings, a drummer is there's movement going on. It's not this, very, guitar play. It's kind of cool, and there could be a lot of energy there, but it's not a visceral thing.
Right.
With drums, it's impact.
It is, yeah.
And I think a lot of people realize when it's not there, oh God, it's not there.
Sam,
so,
man, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
It's been an absolute blast.
Cool. I had a good time.
All right, man. Say goodbye to the good folks out in Drummers Groovecast Nation.
Goodbye, good folks out in Drummers Groovecast Nation.
All right.
Goodbye, good folks out in Drummers Groovecast Nation.
Good enough.
That's better.
Well, thanks for sticking with us. That was a long one. I totally realize that. You folks who've listened to the show before realize that sometimes when we get into these 2+ hour podcasts, that I will split them up into 2 separate episodes. But this is one of those that I think flowed so well and had such good content, and it made a good, clear single statement that I thought, why not go ahead and release it in one big Joe Rogan-esque style podcast? I hope you find it worthwhile. I know that our visiting guests who are the Interpol fans will really love it, but I also believe that our regular listeners will appreciate this podcast and appreciate what Sam had to say. Just getting a really good insight into what he's about, where he now lives, what he's been through, and really what it's like being in Interpol. Plus, Sam just discussed some things that I've never either read before in any print media or heard him discuss before in any sort of interview or any type of video or audio media. And then the listening to in the real-time analysis and explanation of obstacle 1 is something that I've never heard done before. And I really think that turned out well. I think that is the gem of this podcast. That sort of segment was something that just came to me a day or two before we did the show, and I sprung it on Sam when we were setting up, and he was like, man, that sounds like a great idea. Let's do it. So, again, tip of the cap to Sam Fogarino for putting up with my little dalliance with Obstacle 1. Please visit the show notes to this podcast, and there you'll find some links where you can follow Sam and Interpol. These guys have a new CD that's dropping in August. It's called Marauder. And, of course, an extensive tour will follow. So make sure you go out and see Interpol when they come to a town near you. And then if you see Sam, make sure you tell him you heard our show. He'll get a real kick out of it because, again, true to his Wikipedia page, he is a very lighthearted and easily approachable guy. Lastly, please let us know how you like this show. We love it when our listeners correspond with us. Visit our website, drummersweeklygroovecast.com. There you can find everything DWG. Every one of our episodes are there. All of our videos are there. Our links to social media are available as well. You can manage your subscription. And, of course, there's a contact form where you can email us to let us know how you feel about the show or make suggestions for further shows. Do us a favor, share this podcast with your friends, send them links through emails, tag us in social media, share that with your friends as well, or just share our social media posts. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all of the usual suspects. And then finally, if you subscribe through iTunes or if you're an iPhone user, please leave us a quick review. Give us 5 stars if you really enjoyed the show. And I've discovered from some friends who have iPhones just how easy that is. If you open up your podcast app in iPhones and search on an iPhone and search the show will come up and there's an easy little link just to click the 5 stars. It's so easy and we appreciate it so much, and it helps us reach a wider listening audience. As we leave you, underneath my inane ramblings, you're hearing a track that Sam referred to in the show. It's Led Zeppelin's The Rover. It's a tune that we were talking about some production aspects and, of course, Bonham. And so I thought that would be a nice little callback, as we say in this business called show, that would tie the entire show together. So as we leave you, you're hearing Led Zeppelin, The Rover. All right, thanks again so much. We appreciate your listenership. We'll see you every Monday with brand new episodes, every first and third Thursday with Accountability Thursdays. See you soon. Bye-bye.